Oil prices plunge, shares jump on United States and Iran ceasefire plan. Madagascar declares state of emergency over severe fuel shortage. And on the rare China visit, Taiwan's opposition leader calls for reconciliation. Many thanks for joining us on the World News. My name is Sadia. Welcome. Iran, the United States, and Israel reached a tentative two-week ceasefire Wednesday in the war that tore apart the Middle East and distracted the global energy markets, with United States President Donald Trump pulling back from his threats to destroy Iranian civilization.
Trump initially said it was a workable 10-point plan that could help end the war he launched with Israel on 20 February. But he later called the plan fraudulent without elaborating. Trump has said ending Iran's nuclear program entirely was a key point of the war. Israel backed the U.S. ceasefire with Iran, but the deal doesn't cover fighting against Hezbollah in Lebanon, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said early on Wednesday. That contradicted comments from Pakistan, a key mediator that said talks over cementing a peace would begin as soon as Friday in Islamabad. Pakistan also said the ceasefire began immediately, while Iran launched attacks on Gulf Arab states and Israel soon after. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said passage through the strait would be allowed under Iranian military management. It wasn't immediately clear whether that meant Iran would completely loosen its chokehold on the waterway. The plan allows for both Iran and Oman to charge fees on ships transiting through the strait, according to a regional official who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss negotiations they were directly involved in. The official said Iran would use the money it raised for reconstruction. In addition to control of the strait, Iran's demand for ending the war include withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region, the lifting of sanctions, and the release of its frozen assets.
And still on Iran war, Iran's National Security Council said talks with Washington will begin in Pakistani capital Islamabad on Friday, based on Tehran's 10-point proposal. The statement on Wednesday came after U.S. President Donald Trump said he was holding off on a threat to end Iranian civilization and would suspend attacks on the country for 2 weeks.
Trump says the truce was contingent on Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that connects the Gulf to the Arabian Sea and through which a fifth of the global oil supply passes. Iran's partial blockade of the strait imposed in the aftermath of the U.S. and Israel attack on February 28 has disrupted global trade, driving up oil prices and causing fuel shortages across the world. Iran's retaliatory attacks have also reverberated across the Gulf and drawn in Lebanon's Hezbollah and Yemen's Houthis, both of which have launched attacks on Israel, significantly widening the conflict. Trump says in his Truth Social statement that the U.S. has already met and exceeded all of its military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran. He says the U.S. has received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. The U.S. and Iran have agreed on almost all of the various points of contention, he says, and that the 2 weeks period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. Iran's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abbas Araghchi, speaking on behalf of Iranian's National Security Council, confirmed Tehran's agreement. If attacks against Iran are halted, our powerful armed forces will cease their defensive operations, he said in a post on X. Araghchi says that safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible in coordination with Iran's armed forces, and that the decision was taken in light of Trump's acceptance of the general framework of Iran's 10-point proposal as a basis for negotiations.
And to Israel, well, Benjamin Netanyahu office has expressed support for United States' decision to suspend strikes on Iran, but said the two-week truce will not extend to Israel's ongoing military operations in Lebanon. In a statement on X on Wednesday, Netanyahu said Israel backed U.S. President Donald Trump's efforts to ensure Iran no longer poses a nuclear, missile and terror threat to America, Israel, Iran's Arab neighbors, and the world at large.
But the two-week ceasefire does not include Lebanon, says Netanyahu. Netanyahu's statement came after the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif announced that the U.S., Iran and its allies have agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere. Lebanon's national news agency said Israeli military continue to carry out attacks on southern parts of the country. Israeli forces bombed the southern town of Shifra in Tyre region and also issued an evacuation warning for a building near the town. The Lebanese army on Wednesday warned people against returning to the country's south. Lebanon was drawn into the U.S. and Israel war on Iran on March 2 after Tehran-allied Hezbollah launched attacks on Israel. Hezbollah said the attacks were in retaliation for Israel's killing of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on the first day of the war on February 28, as well as Israel's near-daily violation of a ceasefire it agreed to in Lebanon in November 2024. The truce was agreed after more than a year of cross-border fire between Israeli forces and Hezbollah fighters following Israel's launch of its genocidal war on Gaza in October 2023. According to Lebanese authorities, Israeli attacks on Lebanon have killed more than 1,500 people since March 2 and displaced more than 1.2 million people. The Israeli military has also launched an invasion of southern Lebanon and said it aims to seize more territory for what it calls a buffer zone. There has been no immediate comment from Hezbollah or the Lebanese government on Netanyahu's announcement.
Lebanese families displaced by the latest round of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah militants were dismayed by the news that Lebanon may not be part of the two-week ceasefire agreed by Washington and Tehran. As far as the displacement camp on Beirut's waterfront, families felt whiplash as Israel hit parts of southern Lebanon with many of their strikes targeting areas near the coastal city of Tyre.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said Lebanon and Israel will continue to trade fire because Lebanon is not part of the two-week ceasefire. The statement contradicted information released by Pakistan, received as a mediator for the agreement. Lebanon entered a war that has nothing to do with us, and I do not think it is fair for it to stop in the country where it began. Why will still have a party here involved? Said Fadi Zidane, who is displaced from Nabitieh in South Lebanon. Another displaced person said that the roads to Beirut's southern suburbs remain dangerous, even for short trips to replenish supplies. Since the Israel-Hezbollah war resumed last month, 1,530 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in tiny Lebanon, according to the country's health ministry. More than 1 million people have been displaced, largely from southern Lebanon and Beirut's southern suburbs, where Hezbollah has a wide base of support and influence.
Global oil prices have fallen sharply and stock markets have jumped after the U.S. and Iran agreed to a conditional two-week ceasefire deal that includes the reopening of the key Strait of Hormuz waterway. But oil prices remain higher than before the conflict started on 28 February. At the time, it was trading at around $70 a barrel.
The cost of energy has jumped as oil and gas supplies from the Middle East have been severely disrupted after Iran threatened to attack ships trying to use the Strait in retaliation to US and Israeli airstrikes. Stock markets in Europe opened higher following sharp rises in Asia. London's FTSE 100 share index jumped by 2.53% in opening trade. In France, the CAC gained 4%, while Germany's DAX rose by nearly 5%. Japan's Nikkei 225 gained 5%, while South Korea's Kospi jumped nearly 6%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng was up by 2.8%, while the ASX 200 in Australia gained 2.7%. U.S. stock market futures also pointed to a higher open for Wall Street. Futures contracts are an agreement to buy an asset for a set price at a later point in time. In the case of U.S. stock futures, they can indicate the direction of the market before it opens.
Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the ceasefire agreement between Iran and the United States as it traveled to meet with leaders of countries in the Gulf. The Prime Minister is expected to discuss diplomatic efforts to support and uphold the ceasefire. According to Number 10, he will return to the UK on Friday.
The ceasefire comes after Donald Trump threatened a whole civilization will die if Iran did not agree to end the war and unblock the Strait of Hormuz. Comments that led Downing Street to call again for de-escalation. Sir Keir says he welcomes the ceasefire agreement reached overnight, which will bring a moment of relief to the region and the world. He added, "Together with our partners, we must do all we can to support and sustain this ceasefire, turn it into a lasting agreement, and reopen the Strait of Hormuz." Sir Keir is also expected to meet UK military personnel in the region as part of his Gulf trip, which was planned before the ceasefire announcement. For the Conservatives, Shadow Housing Secretary Sir James Cleverly says the ceasefire is an opportunity for Iran to make some serious choices about how it behaves at home and abroad. Former Foreign Secretary Sir James said the war was initiated to ensure Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon, and that remains an absolute priority, adding, "So we'll welcome this 2-week ceasefire, but it's time that must not be wasted." Last week, the UK hosted a virtual summit in which representatives from more than 40 countries began work to assemble a coalition capable of ensuring security in the Straits after the fighting has stopped. This was followed by a military planning conference on Tuesday.
Madagascar has declared a 2-week nationwide state of emergency amid severe fuel shortages caused by the U.S. and Israel's war in Iran. The president says the decision was taken following Tuesday's cabinet meeting over the fares. The situation could lead to public disorder. And Taiwan's main opposition leader has used a high-profile visit to China to push for dialogue with Beijing, invoking the legacy of revolutionary figure Sun Yat-sen amid rising cross-strait tensions. Shang Ya-wong of the Kuomintang TMT party led a wreath at Sun's mausoleum in Niger on Wednesday in a gesture steeped in historical symbol.
Of the Republic of China before the KMT retreated to Taiwan in 1949 after losing the civil war to the communists led by Mao Zedong. Her visit comes at a moment of heightened friction between Taipei and Beijing as China continues to assert sovereignty over Taiwan while refusing to engage with President William, whom it labels a separatist. The wars in Ukraine, Gaza, and Iran have also left many Taiwanese wondering whether a distracted United States, Taiwan's unofficial security guarantor, would actually help them during a future conflict with China. In the face of these concerns, the idea of thawing ties with China still appeals to some Taiwanese voters, said a non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub. Chang framed her trip as an effort to reduce tensions, even as Taiwan's opposition-controlled parliament has stalled the proposed $40 billion increase in defense spending. She acknowledged Taiwan's democratic evolution, including the legacy of decades of martial law known as the White Terror, while also praising China's development. Back in Taiwan, the governing Democratic Progressive Party criticized the trip, accusing the KMT of undermining national security. Party spokesperson said if the opposition truly sought stability, it should stop blocking defense spending. Neither Beijing nor Taipei formally recognizes the other governments, leaving dialogue fragile and heavily politicized.
Indonesian authorities on Wednesday extradited a Scotsman alleged to be a major crime boss to Spain after his removal was delayed multiple times as police pursued an ongoing investigation. Officials said Steven Lyons, described by law enforcement as a senior figure in an international crime syndicate, was flown from Bali to Amsterdam early Wednesday morning, according to a spokesperson for the island's migration office.
Old suspected crime boss is said to be extradited from Indonesia to Spain to face charges of drug trafficking and money laundering. Authorities say the suspect, identified as Lyons, was arrested on March 28 at Bali's Ngurah Rai International Airport after arriving from Singapore. Indonesian officials say he was flagged by an Interpol red notice issued at Spain's request. An international alert used to locate and provisionally arrest suspects pending extradition. Lyons is believed to be the leader of a major criminal network based in Scotland, with operations spanning across Europe and the Middle East. He has reportedly been on Spain's wanted list for nearly 2 years following a killing linked to the group in 2024. Police say the arrest is part of a coordinated international investigation involving authorities from Indonesia, Spain, and Scotland. The network is suspected of trafficking narcotics between Spain and the United Kingdom and laundering money through shell companies in several countries, including Dubai, Qatar, Bahrain, and Turkey. Earlier raids in Scotland and Spain led to multiple arrests, with additional suspects detained in Turkey, the Netherlands, and the United Arab Emirates. Lyons arrived in Bali with 2 companions believed to still be on the island, though he initially told authorities he was traveling alone. Interpol officials said the 2 individuals are linked to the same criminal group but are not currently subject to arrest warrants.
And the co-founder of the Mexico-based Jalisco New Generation Cartel, Eric Venecia Salazar, has pleaded guilty to drug trafficking charges, the U.S. Department of Justice has announced. He was also known as L-85, was captured by the Mexican Army in 2022 in the state of Jalisco and was among a group of 29 alleged drug lords extradited to the United States in February 2025 to stand trial. Rivers grassroots movement has endorsed President Bola Tinubu and Governor Simi Fubara for a second term. They made a call during a massive rally in Port Harcourt, where the president was also declared the grand patron of the movement.
Supporters, as people from all walks of life converged for a singular aim of mobilizing grassroots support for the Tinubu-led administration. High Chief Suboma Jack-Rich, national leader of the Rivers Grassroots Movement, praised the president for what he described as tremendous progress in developing both the Niger Delta and Nigeria as a whole.
We, the leaders and members of the Rivers Grassroots Movement, have taken the bold decision to declare our total support for the re-election, of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, come 2027. At this auspicious moment, we proudly declare His Excellency, our Father, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, as the grand patron of this Rivers Grassroots Movement.
He urged Nigerians to remain patient and supportive, noting that the administration's reforms, such as the establishment of the South-South Development Commission, are already yielding short-term gains and will deliver greater dividends in the future.
We specifically commend Mr. President for signing the South-South Development Commission Establishment Act 2025 into law. This historic legislation serves as a catalyst for industrial growth, job creation, and social advancement. The Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, has been revitalized through the appointment of Dr. Samuel Ogboku as Managing Director. Furthermore, the administration's retention of Tantita Security Service Nigeria Limited for pipeline surveillance remains a masterstroke of economic and security policy. In recognition of his outstanding leadership performance, strategic vision, and transformative impact as Managing Director of the NDDC, the Rivers Grassroots Movement hereby formally bestow on Dr. Samuel Ogboku the award of Trustee of this great movement.
The movement also used the platform to thank President Tinubu for his efforts in restoring political stability within Rivers State.
It's now time to bring you from sports reports. Thank you for still staying with us. Now, participating nations in the 2026 CAF Under-17 African Cup of Nations now know their group stage openings following the draw held today in Cairo. Group A features defending champions and host Morocco as top seeds alongside Tunisia, Egypt, and Ethiopia in what is considered a tough group. Group B has 2013 champions Cote d'Ivoire as top seeds, joined by two-time winners Cameroon, Uganda, and DR Congo. In Group C, 2023 runners-up Mali will face Angola, Tanzania, and Mozambique. Group D includes 2023 champions Senegal alongside South Africa, Algeria, and Ghana. The top two teams in each group will advance to the knockout stage and automatically qualify for the FIFA Under-17 World Cup 2026. Additionally, playoff matches between third place teams will determine the remaining qualification spots for both the qualifier, final, the quarterfinal, and the World Cup. The Russia Olympic Committee says it will provide cash payments to 116 athletes who were unable to compete at the Winter Olympics due to sanctions linked to the war in Ukraine. Russian Sports Minister and committee chairman says the decision was approved by the executive committee earlier this week. He described the ban on Russia and Belarusian athletes as atrocious political decisions. Athletes from both countries have been excluded from many international competitions since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. However, 13 Russian athletes competed as neutral at the Malian Cortina Winter Olympics in Italy. He says that efforts are ongoing to restore a full participation, including competing under the national flag and anthem, with legal action being considered. Meanwhile, some Russian and Belarusian athletes were also allowed to compete under their flags at the Winter Paralympics after the International Paralympics Committee lifted its suspension. In basketball, the Oklahoma City Thunder are closing in on the NBA Western Conference's top spot after a dominant win over the Los Angeles Lakers. The Thunder cruised on a 123-87 victory on Tuesday, putting them just one win away from securing first place for the third straight season. Despite missing key players, including LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and Austin Rivers, the Lakers kept pace early before the Thunder pulled away late in the first half. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the charge with 25 points, extending his streak of 20-plus point games to 139. The Thunder have now won 6 straight and 18 of their last games. The loss marks a third consecutive defeat for Lakers, who now trail the Denver Nuggets in the race for third place in the conference. Now, elsewhere, the Phoenix Suns missed out on an automatic playoff spot after a 119-105 loss to the Houston Rockets. David Durant scored 24 points against his former team, drawing boos from the home crowd. The Minnesota Timberwolves captured, securing the final playoff spot with the win with the Indiana Pacers. Well, that's the world news on AIT. My name is Sadia Dusumu. Thank you so much for staying with us.